Welcome, peace and love family. This is your host, Graciana Africa, here giving you another ISIS Visions, okay? And today I wanted to talk about an African American 17-year-old high school student that won her swim competition, and the officials at the swim competition disqualified her because they said they didn't like the way that the uniform swimsuit was fitting her behind, okay? They said she was showing a little bit too much ass cheek, behind cheek, whatever you want to call it. And I thought it was a little strange and perverted how the school was taking pictures of this 17-year-old African American girl's behind, passing it around, analyzing it like that. Um, it took me back to the way they treated, they kind of like punished Serena Williams when she was wearing her catsuit, um, uniform when she was playing tennis. But then they also had another tennis player who was white wearing the same thing, but she wasn't criticized half the same. And the reason for that, I believe, is white supremacy. It really hasn't changed. The pattern of the behavior hasn't really changed over the years. And if you go and listen to Bobby Hemmitt's Human Artificial, he talks about how it's a lecture that he does on YouTube. Go check it out. How they are, basically a mock of the original human. So naturally, they're going to still have envy and a hatred for the black woman's beautiful physique. It means bountiful, it's curvy, full figured. They're going to have a problem with that. And that's their nice, nasty way of saying, hey, my sons and my husbands are lusting after your body. You're going to be punished for that. Um, so she's basically being criticized and body shamed and, all the non-works, right? And she's just a 17-year-old girl. They treat her no different than the way that the slaves in white supremacy by the slave masters were treated. The female slaves, when they were raped, were usually punished for the rape. So the behavior patterns really pretty much haven't changed. If you go and read the ISIS papers, Dr. Frances Cress Westland talks about that recessive trait that they have that often makes them have this type of behavior. But I want you to go ahead and listen how these patterns haven't changed, and I'm going to break it down a little bit more. But listen to the this news clip real quick, and then I'm gonna come back with my commentary.
This is a huge victory. This is so much better than we thought. This is so much better.
Just days after 17-year-old state champion swimmer Brecken Willis was disqualified from a heat for the way her swimsuit fit, a new win. The ripple effects reaching far beyond her home pool at Diamond High School.
It's not so much that the rule's in place as it is how is it being interpreted, how is it being fairly enforced.
The Alaska School Activities Association reversing the disqualification on Tuesday. This within an hour of receiving a formal request from the Anchorage School District to do so. ASD writing that Willis was, quote, targeted based solely on how a standard school-issued uniform happened to fit the shape of her body. Supporters, including local swim coach Lauren Langford, who published an account of the incident online over the weekend, commending the move.
This is as good or better than I could have hoped for.
The athlete's mother declining to go on camera on Tuesday, but saying it's a good start. As the ASAA maintains it will not let something similar happen to anybody else.
Our directive to the officials will be that you should assume that a uniform is legal.
If the point of all of this was to get back to swimming, now we can do that. And that's big.
Now, this was actually a young, mixed African American 17-year-old girl. So those white supremacist behavior patterns that came from the days of segregation, those patterns are still being, demonstrated today in a nice, nasty way. People forget what they did to Dorothy Dandridge when she stepped foot into a white pool. They drained it all the way out. And it took me back to what Dr. Frances Cress Westling said in the ISIS papers about the fear of genetic annihilation. A black woman is the original. Go back to the story of Sarah Botman. She inspired a generation of Victorian-style dresses so that the white woman can continue to attract their men. They always had that lust for us. They always had the lust for our bodies. Um, from the black woman being what? The original copy, the original prototype. So human hybrid makes a lot of sense because these behavior patterns haven't changed. Even Kim Kardashian tries to duplicate the look of the black woman. Envy is it comes in many ways. All right, and I'm going to read this article to you: the Sarah Botman body shape versus the Victorian dress, the untold African treasures. Excuse me. It's an interesting article that I want to read to you. And then I'm going to come back with commentary after this article. I'm going to also read this article first. This is actually a better article. And I just want to read this because it's important to understand the psychology behind white supremacy so that we can better understand ourselves. And we can understand the psychology by looking at history. History is very important. Studying the history of white supremacy and why they have these type of attitudes and behavioral patterns, even though it seems like it's getting better, but those patterns are still there. The behavior patterns are still there. So when it comes to the envy of the black woman's body, there's this article, it's the bustle dress silhouette versus Sarah Botman's body shape. The first Victorian bustle dress, figure 2, sometimes known as the Grecian bend, was first in fashion in 1870 to 1875, and the second bustle silhouette was worn between 1883 to 1890. After it had been introduced in Paris in 1880, these garments became the fashionable dress of the 19th century, way after Sarah Botman, had been displayed in Europe in the 1810 to 1815, and even after her death, her body continued to be displayed in a museum. Although the Western society branded Sarah Botman as ugly and highly unusual body features, the bustle dress silhouette, which became fashionable in Europe, is no doubt inspired by Sarah Botman's body. After Sarah Botman's death, her body continued to be displayed in a museum. What was so special about a dead body? Her unique shape needed to remain for her unique shape, to remain for display. For how long would one want to continue admiring a dead body? So just look at the similarities of these dresses that they designed in the Victorian, the Victorian time. This is a Victorian bustle dress. And I noticed how they would make the corsets very, very tight to resemble a black woman's waistline. Usually in Africa, you would go and see black women and they would have the tiniest waists. And that's very hard to duplicate. So they had to use garments and clothing to do that. I think Sarah Botman, they were lusting and obsessed over her body. And the men, wanted, they were so, it was a sick lust and envy, to the point where the men had to put her in a fucking museum, a dead body in a museum, and display her. I really feel like that was very perverted. And it was very sick. But then again, we have to understand the psychology behind white supremacy and why these things were done. Because these behavior patterns are not that different from today. They just do it now in more subtle, nice, nasty ways. It may not be as potent, but it's still there. Trust me, it's still there. So I'm pretty much glad. The reason why I brought Sarah Botman into this is because this is a pattern that goes all the way back in history of the behavior of white supremacy and how black women's bodies have been treated throughout time. This young girl, who is actually a mixed African American, she's suffering the same treatment, but just more in a nice, nasty way. Um, yes, there was improvement because they're not that bitter, mad at her, but that behavior is still there. Um, Another example, I'm gonna close this out real quick, because I want to make this short and sweet. But another example of a black woman that was punished for her body because of the lust of white men is Janet Jackson, the one and only Miss Jackson. Miss Jackson, if you nasty. Now, I always loved Janet Jackson, and the way they treated her for that Super Bowl performance was ridiculous. All right. It was, mind you, if you watch the performance, Justin was the one that ripped off the titty blade, the little titty part, the bra part. So why is she the one punished when it was a white man, even though it was her showcase? That's what they tried to argue. Oh, it was Janet's showcase. She said to do it. No, it was easier for them to place blame on her because they were. This is what envy does. Envy makes you act in certain ways. They try to destroy that woman's career. They destroyed her character just off Justin Timberlake ripping off her bra. All right? Why wasn't Justin Timberlake punished just as badly as Janet? He didn't even protect her. So I thought that was another example of the way black women are body shamed, because of the lust of white men. I really think that during that Super Bowl performance, they kept complaining, "Oh, well, the families are watching." Those families were very entertained, and I feel like they were lusting after Janet Jackson, and a lot of the women, the white women, the white supremacist women, they did not like that. So they had to punish Janet in some type of way. No different than they punished this 17-year-old swimmer, but they did it more nice, nasty. But you see how they tried to take her championship from her, try to take the win from her. And look what they did to Janet. I mean, they tried to sue the hell out of her. The NFL tried to sue the hell out of her. So this is a behavior pattern that happens from being envious. So I'm just connecting the dots, and I just wanted to make this short and sweet. You can go ahead and watch some of this clip of Justin Timberlake, performing with Janet. It was, he was the one that ripped off the bra plate, but yet she was the one that was severely punished, and I never understood that until now. So that's the end of the video for Isis Visions. Go ahead and don't forget to like and subscribe. Press that like button, people, and don't forget to stay woke. Stay woke in Babylon. All right, one love.